I'm going to talk on management of hypertension, but I will add in the office practice. I was told by Ira to stick to our office practice. Now, since we are in the possibly going into a hypoglycemic status, and before you go into coma, I'm going to be a little bit unconventional. Usually the take-home message is given at the end of the talk. I would like to give take-home messages right in the beginning of the talk, so that you are alert and you can have some kind of a take-home message and learn about how you can improve the detection of hypertension in your private practice. I would like to mention, I hope you all have the sphygmomanometer, which is calibrated with different sizes of cuffs. We have been distributing for neonates also, and they are used, most important. The second important thing I would like to improve in your practice office material, if you don't have, are the charts. I would like you to have percentile charts for weight and height, which is very important. For diagnosis of hypertension, we all know height percentiles, age and gender is very important, because the diagnosis depends. A 7-year-old child who is tall will have a higher blood pressure, which is normal value, as compared to a shorter child. Also, an obese child is supposed to have a higher blood pressure, which is also normal. So you must have height percentile charts, you must have blood pressure percentile charts, which are available in all textbooks now, which are updated. And the third add to that is the body mass index charts, because obesity is all over the world, as now India is no exception, and you will be doing a lot of harm to these children if you don't take into account the BMI. BMI percentiles for adults as well as children are available. So these three things are very important. Add to that, you must have a tape measure, because the latest in hypertension in adolescents is the waist circumference. It has been observed that the midriff, if you have an adult with a very big tummy, even at 40 years and 35 years, they can get a myocardial infarction. Similarly, the waist circumference, if you can have this recorded, that will help, not necessarily will make the parents anxious. And then of course a family history, which is very important. After having said that, what is next important is, possibly you should, why it doesn't go? You should also have, if you have a very busy, what you call practice, you must, it's important to have a manpower, because it's not necessary that you have to take the blood pressure, but you can train your helper or nurse or whoever, because a lot of educated people have learned how to take the blood pressure, and try and do the blood pressure in a friendly atmosphere, because we all know white coat hypertension has to be ruled out before you finally decide whether this child is hypertensive or not. Because all over the world, and many published data in India also suggest that 2 to 5% of the children who attend regular OPDs and school health programs are detected to have hypertension. The other important message is, if you have a child who's seizuring or having breathlessness, don't send to the ICU. Of course, you control the seizures, but don't forget to take the blood pressure before sending the child to ICU, or before sending a breathless child to the ICU, for the simple reason, the seizuring child will go to MRI or CT scan department without a blood pressure, and this could be a hypertensive encephalopathy, which is an amenably treatable disease, does not require CT MRI, but just a simple blood pressure. So these are some of the things which I would like to mention before I go ahead. I would also like to mention that headaches, dizziness, increased urination and irritability, these are some non-specific so-called mild symptoms, but require a blood pressure recording. So from now onwards, if you can send not a single child without the record of the blood pressure, I would be very happy. The rest of my talk need not be told at all. After having said that, we have hypertensive children who come to with crisis. They definitely require emergency treatment. It's a life-saving thing. And acute symptomatic hypertension who require treatment. Remember, drugs come bottom of the list. They require non-pharmacological treatment, and drug treatment should come the last. Also, it is important to know 90% of the children who are pre-adolescent have a secondary cause for hypertension, and you must keep your mind open and do minimum tests. Don't do expensive invasive tests right in the beginning, such as MR-angio or VMA or anything, because it is driven by somebody who has found a pheochromocytoma and has presented at one of the meetings. And important thing is, primary or essential hypertension is coming up as an important cause of hypertension which requires a long-term treatment. Asymptomatic hypertension, only the pediatricians and GPs can talk to us or tell us about. Then, when do you call a child as a hypertensive? 3 readings of systolic blood pressure or diastolic blood pressure after ruling out white coat hypertension, as I said. So, if you have the first reading which is like a pre-hypertensive or hypertensive according to the percentiles, call the child later on if he is asymptomatic, do it in an ambience or find out whether at home it can be done, so that you know the 15% of the hypertensive children which were found in a school health program by one of my students turned out to be down to 5% when she took the blood pressure in the school without the teacher. So you can imagine the white coat hypertension. And the third time when she took, when they were playing or at their leisure time, the incidence came down to even less. So you can imagine that whomever you call hypertensive child may not be a hypertensive child. And of course ambulatory devices are not available, but this is commonly found in the published data from Western countries. Percentile differs automatically according to age, gender and height, as I have been mentioning earlier. Then after having seen the value of the blood pressure, then you will categorize this child as a normal if it is less than 90th centile for the age, gender and height, pre-hypertensive if it is between 90th to 95th centile. Now what do you do for pre-hypertensive? Follow them closely. Normally we want you to take blood pressure once a year of every single child that comes to your OPD, but pre-hypertensive children require more frequent blood pressure measurements to decide whether they go into stage 1, that means from 90th centile they will go to above 95th centile and 99th centile plus 5 millimeter Hg. Now this stage 1 hypertension is very critical before there is any damage to the target organs such as heart, CNS, kidneys, so on and so forth, and eyes. Don't forget the eyes, don't forget to do ophthalmoscopic examination of a child who is in the 99th percentile. You will be missing otherwise the retinopathy. So it is important, and stage 1 hypertension definitely requires some treatment. Now treatment, as I will go along, will be either pharmacological or non-pharmacological. Lot of non-pharmacological treatment helps in reducing the hypertension in the early stage. Stage 2 hypertension is equal to 99th centile plus 5 millimeter of mercury, and most important, if you demonstrate end organ injury by doing simple echocardiography, fundus examination, BUN serum creatinine, and of course CNS sort of is important, then you will call that this is critical, and this requires a definite treatment, and this requires also very close follow. So after having said and found out that the child is really hypertensive, then you go to the, definitely first you will find the age of the child. We are not going to talk more about the neonatal hypertension at this point of time, because it is usually secondary in origin and the causes are very different. Pre-adolescent hypertension, as I mentioned earlier, usually 90% of the time is secondary to some disease in the kidney or coarctation of aorta or endocrinal problems. More concern is adolescent hypertension at this point of time because of its long-lasting effects in the adulthood, and the beginning of the hypertension of an adult starts during this adolescent group, and there are a lot of things that a general pediatrician or a general physician can do to avert the side effects of this into the adult life. As I mentioned, 90% of adolescent, 90% of the pre-adolescent are having a secondary hypertension. If you have an adolescent child with the hypertension, you can look at just 3 or 4 different causes. So it eliminates the cause of endocrinal, etc., unless you have a specific signs. And you look at primary or essential hypertension as the first important cause, and the family history, and of course obesity, syndrome X are important. What is syndrome X? It is the combination of obesity, hyperlipidemia, and of course diabetes mellitus if it is present, and insulin sensitivity. So this is called syndrome X, and it is very much in the Western literature, less recognized in our country, and we should recognize it. Or chronic kidney disease 3 or 5, very easy to diagnose. You can just do BUN serum, creatinine, electrolytes and blood gases, and sonography of the kidney. So these are 3 or 4 basic investigations which are required. Don't send VMA and renin-angiotensin and all at this level. It is a waste of the patient's money, and it is not required in an adolescent patient unless you have a clinical clues, which I am going to rapidly go through. Then we come to the neonates. Neonates are a different entity, and you can recognize that a neonatal hypertension is usually found out by the monitoring of the blood pressure in the either the intensive care unit or by the it is not easy to diagnose it by the regular sphygmomanometer, and it requires a different kind of a monitoring altogether, and we are not going to go in details. But 1 to 6 years, the hypertension easily can be diagnosed by just simple urine examination and ultrasonography, and also you can find out by the heredofamilial syndrome, a dysmorphic faces, which I am going to go in detail. But what I think a practicing pediatrician gets most of the children with hypertension and easy to do the blood pressure are between 6 to 10 years of age, and there are only 4 important categories. So remember, you have glomerulonephritis easily diagnosed by urine examination, just BUN, creatinine and sonography. You don't need a very sophisticated studies. You have reflux nephropathy, which is another important. That means vesico-uretral reflux, which has been not diagnosed earlier and then can give rise to reflux nephropathy. This requires a little bit careful assessment, and herein you do the nuclear scan studies such as DMSA renal scan. So remember that sometimes we order and you have to send it to a center where it can be done. Aortoarteritis is another entity which is specific to our country, and you sometimes can miss it. Herein you will find the urine examination may be normal, but the BP is very high, and sometimes if you have not done the palpation with the femoral, or you have not put the stethoscope on the abdomen to listen to the bruit, these are the simple signs that you should not forget in your initial assessment of a child with hypertension, and that can be easily recognized, and further diagnosis requires a little bit invasive investigations, and that's why it has to be separated from other conditions. And of course the last is a essential hypertension. That means you don't have any clues to any of this, and you find usually it is a familial hypertension, which is an essential hypertension, and you do not have any cause for it, and it is coming up in as high as 30 to 40% of the adolescent, and it is associated with obesity, and you will find that these are the usually children which are affluent class, and you can find out most of the other children are less in weight, but the essential hypertensive children many a times are obese. So what are the clinical clues? Because after having said, the clinical clues are family history, which is very important. Family history of a high blood pressure, sudden deaths at young age, in 40s. Of course, history of edema, rash and joint pains would be very important, because that will show you a collagen vascular disease like systemic lupus erythematosus. One should not miss any of these findings. However busy you may be in your clinic, but you will have to go over this very quickly. Joints, especially history of joint pains or actually joint swellings. Pulses and bruit. Put your hand on not the radial pulse alone, but also on the femoral pulse. Sometimes coag is missed for many a times, and if you find if the pulses are not looked into properly, if at all you have time, you can put the stethoscope on the abdomen. The patient would wonder why you have put the stethoscope on abdomen and not the chest. Maybe doctor is forgetful, but you may hear a bruit, and that may be your important, sign to find out whether this child should undergo any studies with the, sort of imaging of the aorta. Fundus examination, never forget, because retinopathy is an important, association of a hypertension with vasculitis or collagen vascular disease, or also many a times if it is missed, then you may have a child who may be having optic atrophy later on. Dysmorphic faces, because there are a number of syndromes, I am not going to go, but quickly find out whether this child has a obesity or has a polydactyly, which is a Lawrence-Beadle syndrome, whether this child could be a Turner's, a girl who looks odd, and also possibly of a Turner syndrome, which are the other causes of hypertension. I am not going to go, this is all in the textbook, but these are the clues which we should get from the pediatricians and then send to us for further management. So these are important. Simple tests in such situation in your office practice, you must have a routine urine and culture, because lot of children with chronic pyelonephritis associated with many of these diseases like vesico-urethral reflux and urinary tract infections are hypertensive adolescents. So you must not miss that. And of course, renal function tests are very important. Serum electrolytes are important. One clue I have found, if you have high potassium with hypertension, then you definitely would like to rule out endocrinal cause, but it is rare. Remember, 90% of the hypertensive children have either renal or renovascular causes, 5% may have endocrinal causes, and 5% coarctation and others. So, you must find out what are the common conditions. Then, of course, VBG is important, venous blood gas analysis, to find out whether there is any acidosis, which probably tells you about the renal, sort of renal failure associated with the hypertension. And nowadays a lot of importance is given to the uric acid, which has been noted to be a marker for essential hypertension. So you remember not to forget to see the uric acid. In the renal panel, the whole thing comes, but sometimes we don't pay attention. We look at it, we see it, but we don't analyze it. Goes without saying, ultrasonography is very important to rule out the congenital malformations. I am not going to go in detail, but polycystic kidney disease is a very important cause of hypertension, which sometimes needs to be. Now, what are we interested? Why are we so worried about hypertension? Okay, the blood pressure is high, so what? You give some sublingual nifedipine and all. No, because what is important in the long run is a target organ injury. And for the target or injury, you have to, as I said, ophthalmic examination, kidney function test, and you need to do echocardiography, which is a very important for the hypertensive child. What are the imaging which are minimally done, and what are the imaging which can be done in a specialized center? Because as a general pediatrician, the minimum imaging that you must ask for is ultrasonography, which will rule out the possibility of any congenital anomalies of the kidney associated with hypertension, including your hydronephrosis, and also will give you clue as to the diagnosis of renovascular hypertension. In renovascular hypertension, you find asymmetrically, kidney which is smaller than the other, which may give you a clue to the renal artery stenosis, and which has got a definitely a different kind of a treatment as compared to the chronic glomerulonephritis or other causes of hypertension. I am not going to go into great many detail, but I can assure you that renovascular hypertension definitely has to be separated from the other renal causes, because the treatment most of the time can be interventional treatment. Unilateral renal artery stenosis, there are a lot of interventional studies to open up the renal artery stenotic region, and you can get good results, and less of a pharmacological treatment is required to these. I am not going to go into aortography, DSA, CT angiography, or for aorta arteritis, because these suspect these, that means you find that there is a radiofemoral delay, and you find that if you have done the blood pressure in the lower extremities, you find the difference. You are expected to send this patient to a specialized center, because as I mentioned earlier and even now, I think these require a specialized treatment. A lot of children, in spite of going through all that, you cannot find the cause, but you are suspecting that these are not primary hypertension, and then you have to send them to the radionuclide studies. An important study is the DMSA renal scan, which is very essential from the point of view of finding out if there are renal scars in so-called reflux nephropathy. Okay, what are the goals of management? I am going rather rapidly because of short of time. I hope you are with me up to here, and the most important is first to diagnose hypertension, as we mentioned earlier, and follow it up, because what is important is a hypertensive child who initially has a high blood pressure may be treated with a non-pharmacological treatment and a pharmacological treatment. Don't jump and start all kinds of newer drugs which are in the market for controlling the hypertension. And the whole emphasis is to keep the blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic, below 90th centile. So think about, as you are thinking about the growth, think about the blood pressure, which requires to be categorized according to the centiles, and below 90th centile, the organs such as eyes, heart and kidneys can be saved if you keep the blood pressure below this. So that means regular checkup of blood pressure of such a child will be very important. The third important thing is you have to prevent the progression of the chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease and CNS disease or retinal damage, and for that possibly you have to work in partnership with one of the specialists, either it is a kidney specialist or you will have to work with cardiovascular physicians. And to maintain the growth and also the cognition is very important. If a child undergoes untreated hypertension with hypertensive encephalopathy and there is a damage to the brain, then the cognitive function is definitely going to go down. So early diagnosis in pre-hypertensive, as I mentioned, and stage 1 hypertension is very important for treatment of these children. Then how do you treat these children? The most important thing is minimum drugs and dosages to achieve long-term goals and follow-up, and that I think is in the territory of a general pediatricians. Once you have diagnosed hypertension and you have sent to appropriate whatever center you have sent, and you got a diagnosis that this is a most, as I said, 70 to 80% of the time it is renal or renovascular, then what do you do? What the pediatrician can do is a lifestyle modification. This is the era where you find that a lot of general practitioners and general pediatricians can help. The most important are the reduction of the systolic blood pressure can be achieved without doing any pharmacological treatment by weight reduction. It has been noted in studies where overweight children have been treated with weight reduction, by which mean the exercising and using less of television and junk food and going through a certain kind of treatment for obesity. The 5 to 10 millimeter reduction is possible with 10 kg weight loss. So putting them through this non-pharmacological treatment simultaneously along with the investigations and of course if required drug is equally important, and exercise is very important. Change in the diet obviously will cause, but the response is 2 to 8 millimeter reduction. So it's not very much, but still it is important. Very important is the sodium intake. We Indian foods contain a lot of sodium. We like our pickles and papads and so on and so forth. So it's important to have a good dietitian who can reduce the sodium intake, and it can reduce the systolic blood pressure by 2 to 8 millimeters, which is quite a bit. And of course, caffeine and alcohol is not commonly consumed. That's what we feel, but I think adolescents may be doing that, and that's equally important. and limit TV and sedentary habits, which you see can reduce the blood pressure 4 to 9 millimeters, and yoga and aerobic exercises. These are some of the things that one should think about it. And these non-pharmacological treatments especially are effective in obese hypertensive children, which are adolescents, and also children with hyperlipidemia and familial hypertension, where the whole family may be obese and whole family requires to change their lifestyle. And of course, the insulin resistance is another thing which is coming up, which is not yet recognized. Then of course, the non-pharmacological treatment are very effective in pre-hypertensives, and then of course, there is still a role for a pharmacological treatment. So what I want to emphasize is all the drugs which are written in the textbooks to reduce the hypertension is not the first line of a treatment for a patient with a hypertension, and one should pay more and more attention to the non-pharmacological treatment. I think my time is up and I will be stopping.